Welcome to Barrett and Baxa. Everyone else has a podcast. Why not us?
Hey everybody, Steve Barrett and Baxa here, your favorite part of the Barrett and Baxa duo. And today I am with a guy that I know very well, good friend of mine, and probably a good friend of a lot of you out there watching the podcast. Mr. Blaine Tolison is joining us today. What is up with you, Blaine?
Steve Barrett, thank you so much for having me here, dude. I miss being around you on a daily basis.
I don't know who could miss that.
Your energy, you're so full of life, you're funny. I miss, one of the things I miss most about news is working with Steve Barrett. And I do miss your counterpart. I was hoping to see him too, Mr. Bob Baxa.
Yeah, Bob Baxa is on the road. He's a trucker that can read English traffic signs. He's one of those truckers that can actually read the traffic signs on the sides of the road. Unlike this guy that just killed some people down there in Florida, down in our old stomping ground. Blaine, let me set you up real quick for people who don't know you. Blaine is, let me know if I get any of this wrong. Blaine's an Emmy-nominated journalist. He is a news anchor, reporter. You're an actor and a voice actor. You're an improv comedian at some points and a fellow podcaster right there. But in fact, you look like you're in a nicer podcast studio than me right now, Blaine.
I don't know, man. You got the rockabilly vibes going on there.
Yeah, I try to do that. I'm surrounded by lots of stuff. So you're most recently, as far as journalism goes, you were a morning anchor at WSOC in Charlotte, correct?
That's correct. I was a morning anchor and a reporter as well. So I was the dual reporter anchor.
Yeah, and you anchored a bit at WFTV, but mostly you were known for being the Daytona Beach, Florida, or the Volusia County, sort of the North Bureau for WFTV Channel 9, which is where we worked together for multiple years. But you've also been, if I've got this right, Tulsa, Dayton, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, and Atlanta, where you did radio. I saw that in your bio. You did some radio in Atlanta.
I may have popped on there. I never lived in Atlanta, but I may have popped on there.
Okay. WSB radio. So that must have been in the yeah. So I was actually gonna say to you, I'm envious because I always wanted to do radio, but I only did television. You know, people are like, well, why would you want to do radio if you were doing television? Radio's fun like this. Radio's fun like podcasting.
Yeah, and I felt like all my radio friends always said like it was much lower pay than TV, but I'm like, they're going to concerts, they're getting concert tickets and all these crazy things that radio stations have hookups for. So their hookups and perks like were way better, even if they were maybe making less money.
But when we get like free haircuts at Sam's Club or something like that, or Fantastic Sam's.
Back in the day, those kind of started going away toward the end there.
I had a TV station, my first TV station, WSAW in Wausau, Wisconsin. The main anchor, her name was Terry Barr. She went out and worked a deal with this really nice salon. It was like this French hair salon. And so at the end of the newscast, we would say, you know, hairstyles brought to you by such and such hair salon. And apparently we had sold some ad space to Fantastic Sam's, which is one of those super cheap haircut places. They called and complained and said, why isn't it sponsored by us? So Terry Barr lost her deal, and they said, hairstyles brought to you by Fantastic Sam's. Like, who would watch that?
Yes.
And so I was a news photographer at the time, so everybody in the newsroom got free haircuts. So I would get free haircuts as a photographer, as a camera guy.
I finagled that as a reporter at my first station in Tallahassee. I heard that the talent got free haircuts at this really fancy salon in Tallahassee, Florida. And I walked in there and I said, yeah, I'm a talent with WCTV. And they started giving me free haircuts there. But I had found out later on that was just for the anchors. And as a reporter, you weren't allowed to. But I was able to finagle it. I think I was making like my first job was like somewhere between 16 and 20,000 a year.
Yeah, we were talking about that. I've got a little grandson running around my house right now. So I had kids like very early in my career. So when my first child was born, I was making like 13, 14 grand.
Ugh. And what year is this?
This would have been like 1991.
That's tough, man. Yeah, because that's poor even by then. The standards.
Well, I was living in Stevens Point, Wisconsin at the time, so it wasn't a lot of expense. I think my rent was probably $250 a month or something.
Yeah, you make do. You know, and it pays off down the road, hopefully. You know.
Yeah. So, Blaine, do you have a degree in journalism from you're a Seminole, right? So you.
Yeah. So oddly enough, I don't actually have a journalism degree. I graduated.
Nor do I.
Communications degree, which that was a difficult one to. They don't give you a skill in communication except to communicate, which is what we're doing now. But I kind of geared it toward a video production track by putting electives that involved, using cameras. It involved some on-camera work as well. There was a TV interviewing and hosting class where I got to go to NFL Pro Day at Florida State. So I got to see all these NFL scouts come to the football players. And I had a minor in English, which Bob Jordan really appreciated. I know you had him on your podcast not too long ago.
Good old Bob Jordan,
which was great.
Everybody's got a Bob Jordan story.
Yeah, so that's my education. I got one for you later, probably a few of them, but yeah. Well, I know we're tight for time.
Yeah, no, we're not tight for time, man. I got all the time in the world for you, buddy. Listen, so a lot of people don't know. Everybody knows Florida Man. Like Florida Man nationwide has become a thing. But you worked in an area. So I worked in like downtown Orlando in the main station. But you were in a bureau in Daytona Beach, which is in Volusia County.
We bred the Florida people, the Florida men.
Yeah.
In Volusia County, Daytona Beach, that was kind of like the epicenter.
Right.
If all the Florida men came down,
right,
on a flying saucer, they were dropped off in Volusia County. And
the thoroughbreds of Florida Man. So, and we even had a subcategory of Florida Man that we called Volusia County Man, or sometimes Daytona Man, and that was even worse. That was far crazier.
It was usually sometimes like not, and it was crazy, but there was also sometimes some elements of like disgust and dirtiness to it that it wasn't like even reportable, know, because there was something just, it was crazy, but it was not something you want to talk about on the news. It was that bad.
Yeah. And you also, everybody thinks, oh, Daytona Beach, that's like beautiful Florida beaches, which it is. And it is like the waterfront in Daytona. But Daytona's got some rough parts of town. And not only that, Daytona invites like 100,000 friggin' bikers, Harley riders into town for about 10 days a year. Yeah, twice a year, actually.
But the original bike week is the spring bike week, which I think goes on for like 10 days.
And then they couldn't get enough of that, so then they had to add Biketoberfest.
Biketoberfest, yeah.
And
which your Van Halen band got to play at one of those, right?
We did 10 days straight. 10 days straight at a bar.
And you're still here alive to tell about it.
Every night. Yeah, I took 10 days of vacation, or I took a vacation that week, and I was on the air at 3:00 in the morning on a Friday, and then I took a nap, and I was on the stage at like 10 o'clock at night that Friday night. And then I went all the way through until I was left the stage at midnight, went back on TV on the following Monday, after 10 days, and I was exhausted.
You got something running through your blood that I think a lot of us wish we did have to even survive that. Did your listeners know that you're in a Van Halen cover band?
They do. I talk about it regularly. I mean, I don't talk about it on every one of the podcasts, but I talk about Van Halen enough that people know I'm a huge Van Halen fan, and I've got pictures of myself right back here on stage. You can't see them really well. One of these days, Bob and I said that we're going to do a whole show just on the Van Halen band. Maybe we'll bring Patrick Murray in. He was the guitarist, fantastic guitarist, and some of the other guys in the band and talk.
They were fantastic. Watching you in that band was one of those moments where you're having an awesome time. You're having a really great time, but you don't. I wasn't old enough to sit there and say, man, I'm going to remember this. Like, I need to cherish this. But I still remember it, and thank goodness I do. But but it was just one of those really fun times getting to go see you guys play and just have a good time. Again, that's the fun that you brought to the news business. Even though that was not part of the TV journalism world, that was your hobby. It was still part of the fun of the whole scene of Central Florida.
Yeah, I tried to bring a little bit of Ron Burgundy to the thing, and because it is a stressful business. Real quick, I'm going to see if I can find it. I've got this great picture of you. You're standing on a balcony in this bar, and I'm in my wig climbing down the wall of the bar. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Climbing. I jumped over the rail and I climbed down the wall with my microphone, and I'm singing as I'm hanging off of the railing, climbing down to the bar from the second floor of Club 57 West.
Yes. It was like, yeah.
We were kind of the house band at Club 57 West for a while there.
The place was huge, though. Yeah, it had a balcony, and the if I remember correctly, they had like those stage beams, but that you could climb up.
Yeah.
It was like it was very professional.
It's unfortunate. I've been back to Orlando recently, and that place is the last I saw. It was sort of just overrun. That whole Pine Street there was just overrun with homeless people, which a lot of downtown Orlando is. As I know you were over in Daytona, but Orlando really started to turn into a seedy spot, and it was unfortunate to watch it go downhill because downtown Orlando used to be just a really, really fun place to hang out. And I suppose it still is fun, but to me, it looks like it's a little more dangerous and a little crazier now.
Yeah, and I think as local journalists, we got to see a side of that world that I don't think the public really gets to see when those things do manifest and become an issue, homelessness and the sort of the juxtaposition between homelessness, people having a place to stay, a place to go, versus the other side, which is people trying to enjoy these spaces and try to be in these locations where homelessness is an issue. It is a touchy subject, and we used to see it all the time as residents and as journalists.
Yeah, you had that big story, I remember. I think you were there when they were trying to put the homeless shelter sort of out of town, like on the outskirts of town, and there were big homeless protests at City Hall. Were you there for that?
Yeah, that was, I want to say that was in my my last year or last few years out in Daytona. We had and it was kind of crazy. This was like before COVID, which there were a lot of homeless encampments, like a growth of that during COVID. Mm-hmm. But this was well before that. This is about 2015, 2016. They found some loophole, or a homeless advocate told them about a loophole where, hey, if you camp out on public property, there's nothing they can do about it if they don't have enough housing for you. And the city of Daytona Beach, they went to I think the Volusia County like DMV tag office. It was a county services building right on Beach Street.
Daytona. That's what it was. It wasn't City Hall necessarily.
And it started out with like a few tents, and then in a few weeks' time, the whole area was just a giant homeless encampment. And the craziness of, again, just being in Florida. What was going on in this camp got exposed by a county councilman who decided to dress up as a homeless person and spend the night there.
Oh, yeah. I forget these details.
And just like, that's something I haven't seen or heard of anywhere else. And that wasn't even a crazy Florida man story. That was a county councilman who decided to dress up like a homeless guy to see what was going on in this homeless encampment. And that was pretty unprecedented at the time. I hadn't seen that before. But yeah.
Not just having Daytona, man. That area had some pretty colorful politicians and some crazy things going on. One of them, the famous Mike Chitwood, who was Daytona Beach police chief, and he's now Volusia County Sheriff. I think he's still the sheriff down there.
He's the sheriff.
But he's one of those outspoken Florida sheriffs like Grady Judd that just tells it like it is, man. And he's a cop's cop. You know, I think his dad was like a cop in New York or something like that. What was it like to work with Chitwood? Because at the time, like he was the Grady Judd of the day. I don't know if he's that flamboyant now. I don't want to call him flamboyant. That tough. He was tough, is what he was.
He was tough, and I think I want to say that Chief Chitwood kind of helped usher in sort of a. I don't want to go as far to say as like a renaissance or rebirth of Daytona, but sort of a better era post spring break craziness era for Daytona Beach, which was, you know, he was tough on crime and he was tough on, you know, nefarious acts, as he would say. He'd let people know, if you're coming to Daytona to commit any nefarious acts, we're going to find you, we're going to catch you, and we're going to put you in jail.
And he was willing to do it himself.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He
absolutely.
was no desk chief.
And I gotta kind of rewind just a little bit. So Mike Chitwood is from Philadelphia.
Oh, Philadelphia it was.
So his dad was a higher ranking police officer in Philadelphia as well. So when Mike Chitwood came down to Florida, you know, he's just not like anything anybody's ever seen down there. You know, Florida people are not quite Southerners, but they're pretty nice. You know, they're pretty friendly, and they're not, you know, used to that Northeast just tell you like it is. I'm not going to be nice about it. You know,
right.
This is how it is. So he was sort of this phenomenon who he'd say it bluntly, and he'd say it in some words, some choice words that you never heard anybody describe a situation like that. And yeah, he would get involved in these crime calls himself, where they, you know, you and I were talking about this, they would be negotiating with a guy who's in an apartment with a woman or something, and he's got a gun. And Chief Chitwood would, you know, and I had a friend who was on the SWAT team in Daytona Beach, and he said he had his sniper rifle pointed at, you know, this apartment building at the door. And the plan was not for the chief to walk up to this place. Yeah. And
were you there? I was actually on that scene that day. Maybe I was filling in for you.
Well, so I'm hearing about this from my my cop buddy. That, you know, Chief, he'd walk right in front of, like, you know, he had his scope on the door of this apartment. Yeah. And here comes Chief walking right into his line of fire. And he's on the radio like, I've got Chief right in my line of sight here. What do you want me to do? Do I stand down? Because the Chief is walking into a hot seat.
Yeah. No, he walked up. It was a second floor apartment, and this guy had kind of barricaded himself in this apartment, and the whole building surrounded by the SWAT team. And the Chief puts on a bulletproof vest, you know, because he doesn't normally wear a bulletproof vest. He's usually in the office a lot of times. But he puts on this... And he walked up, he knocked on the door, and the kid, it was a young guy, I don't want to say kid, young man, looks out the window and starts talking to the chief, and we can't hear what he's saying because we're kind of across the street with, you know, the snipers dialed in on this apartment. And Chief starts talking to this kid through the doorway, and he's got like some woman, I don't know if it was his mom, his aunt, or his girlfriend, or some sort of somebody he was related to. And the chief said, look, you could kind of hear him going, you don't want to do this, son. You don't want to do, but you couldn't really hear what they were talking about. And the guy, suddenly the door opens and the guy walks out onto the patio, turns around, puts his hand behind his back, and Chitwood cuffs him and walks him down to a patrol car. Like, just solves the problem right then and there. So I interviewed the chief later, and he said, this was a guy that didn't want it to escalate any further, and I knew that if I just walked up there and I had a conversation with the kid, he would understand our side. We understood his side. He didn't want to get hurt. He didn't want to hurt anybody. But he had just, like, robbed a bank. I think he had either robbed a bank or a convenience store with a gun, like, an hour earlier.
I can imagine what he said to this guy. You know, he's like, why don't you come on out, brother? He's like, I understand you're going through a difficult time. You know, he had
that accent too.
He had that accent. He's like, I tell you what, this isn't going to end good for you, and this is not a good situation for all of us. So why don't you come on out? He's like, you don't want to do this, son. But yeah, but he had a way with people, and I think it's why he became elected as a sheriff, because what I think a lot of politicians lack nowadays is that ability to connect with people, or at least know your audience, know who you're talking to. And Chief Chitwood was like that. He could read people. He had a very great talent for reading people, their behavior, their mannerisms. And he not only could he do that, he could take that information and figure out what to say to persuade someone or intimidate someone or he was actually he had moments where he was very compassionate too, where he knew how to say things to make people feel better, or surrender.
Yeah. And well, were you there when he got in the fist fight with the biker and got his nose broken?
So that was like this aftermath on Monday morning after I think it was Biketoberfest or Bike Week, one of those. But yeah, we had gotten word that he got in a bar fight, is what we called it, basically, because he was walking
with a rowdy
around.
biker.
Yeah, because he could have just gone home for the weekend. He could have hung out at the office or whatever. But Chief Chitwood during Bike Week would go do patrols with his officers. He would walk around Bike Week.
And this would be an unruly crowd, man. Once they started drinking.
You had
wall-to-wall people.
Outlaw biker gang people, like all sorts of stuff, and people who didn't like the law, coming in there.
And he always, if they were scumbags, he called them scumbags.
They were scumbags. This scumbag over here, he decides. So he ended up doing an interview with us because the result of this bar fight, I think it was Main Street. It was a bar on Main Street. This guy almost bit his finger off.
That's right. I didn't remember this part of it. Boy, we need Mike Chitwood on the podcast. See if you can work that out. I know you two are friends still.
I can make it happen. I think he'll take my call.
Tell him Steve Barrett wants to have you, and you can be on there with us. We'll do.
You tell Steve Barrett. I'll talk to him anytime, brother. You tell him I'll talk to him anytime.
He'd probably say that.
Time and place, I'll do it.
I used to love filling in for you. Here's the thing that I didn't like about filling in for you, and that was Claire Metz. Because Claire Metz was a competing reporter on a competing television station. She is absolutely famous.
Before we get to Claire, we got to finish. We got to tell people the bar fight story.
Okay, go with the bar fight, and then we'll get to Claire.
I know people kind of want to hear that. Yeah. He's walking to a bar doing patrols with his officers, and some guy spits on him, like hawks a loogie on his back, and someone goes, he didn't realize it, and someone goes, hey Chief, that guy just spit on you. And Chief goes, who? And he turns around, and the guy's like, I did. And he goes, you come here. And the guy apparently just started swinging on Chief, and they just started brawling basically. And Chief got the upper hand, thank goodness.
He kind of didn't look like it because he was all bloody and his nose was broken. I think this guy was crazy. You should have seen his mugshot. He had this like long hair, like he was not of normal society at all. And I mean, for someone to attack a police chief. Yep. But anyway, but that guy threw the first punch, and Chief Chitwood literally went to the ground with this guy, busted his nose. The guy got his finger in his mouth and almost bit the chief's finger off. He broke his finger. He had it in a splint. But he invited the media to his office on Monday because we're all calling. We had his cell phone number. We were calling him like, Chief, come to my office at 9:30. I'll talk to you at 9:30. Come on by. I'll tell you all about it. Where normally, like any other police department would have put out a press release that said there was an incident involving our police chief on Thursday night. The police chief was injured. It's still under investigation, and we'll have no further comment at this time. Something like that. But no, Chitwood just calls everybody in and says, everybody wants to know what happened. Just get in my office.
Yeah, come on by. So I'm walking through there, and they're saying, hey, that guy just spit on you, Chief. I turn around, I look, and he's saying, yeah, I spit on you. I said, you come here. And he told us the whole story as I said it. But yeah, we had his cell phone number, so we'd call. You couldn't just call him up all the time. It wasn't like that. But if it was something like that, where you're just like, Chief, we're here and you got in a fight, like he would understand you calling him for that, but you couldn't call him for like a drug deal gone bad or something like that. It didn't work like that. So, but yeah, he was just that kind of chief. And yes, filling in, you learned real quickly.
Real quick.
You had to be on your toes when you're going up against the famous Claire Metz.
Yeah, she ruled that county.
Yes.
You know,
Well,
you did a good job. You did a good job competing against her, but it took some effort because she just knew everybody. The Metz family had been in that county, you know, since I think they founded Volusia County.
there. They're still there.
I know.
Wesh, the
Which
state,
is Channel 2. That's the NBC
Yeah,
affiliate. That was our competition.
competitor. They started in Daytona, so Claire, like, we had this tiny little office in a building on Seabreeze Boulevard on the beach side, and it was nice. I loved it. It was great. But Wesh and Claire and her photographer Hutch Hutchinson.
I love Hutch. Hutch is great.
They Hutch Brenneman, I think is. But anyway, their bureau office was the old Wesh TV station,
and they had the big Channel 2 tower right in the middle of town, so
they
everybody
had
watched Channel 2 in Daytona.
Yeah, they had a smaller version of so everybody in Cocoa Beach and Brevard County, they grew up with Channel 9 because that's what they got there, and in Daytona they grew up with Channel 2. But as you know, the broadcasting ability improved, and you know, Wesh said, well,
Signals got stronger.
Yeah, you know, Disney's in Orlando. I think this is well before Disney, but strategically, Wesh made a decision to set up their main headquarters in Orlando. But they kept their foundation in Daytona, and Claire, that was their bureau office. So physically, intellectually, historically, Wesh just had the upper edge, and Claire had the edge in Daytona Beach and the surrounding area. And I remember I felt very honored. We were at the jail, which Volusia County's first appearances were the best in town. You walked into the courtroom, and you were feet away. And when I say in the courtroom, they didn't put you in the gallery with the people sitting and watching. They brought you into the actual court part where the attorneys and the judge were, and they had this little section for the journalists to line up our cameras to see, and they invited us all in. But anyway, so I'm walking in there with all the TV stations, reporters, and photographers. Me, my photographer Jason Sargent, and Claire, and Hutch, and we walk by, and this guy's sitting on there, and he goes. And this is when I felt like I had made it in Volusia County. We're walking by into the jail for first appearance, and he goes, Claire Metz, and he's smiling, and she goes, hi, honey, and he looks up to me and he goes, Blaine Tolison, and I'm like, hot damn, like right with the greatness of Claire
They
Metz.
remember my name, yeah, because Claire could walk up to a crime scene and she'd kind of walk over around the corner, you know, along the police line, and some officer or detective would just beeline straight to Claire and start talking to her, and you'd want to run over there and go, hey, what are you talking to her about? Talk to all of us. But you knew that Claire like went to elementary school with that guy. You know?
Oh yeah, her kids went to school with them or something. Yeah, because so I told you that story about where Wesh started and their footprint there, but her husband. Wonderful man. His family, Pete Metz. Okay. His family had one of the only like grocery stores in Daytona Beach Shores, the city just to the south of Daytona. So it was a grocery store for many decades, and then eventually, you know, your Publix and all those started coming around. And they, at some point in history, they converted it to a packaged liquor store, and slash bar.
Right.
So then over time they ended up with two of these bars, and it was Metz 1 and Metz 2 liquor, and there were two of them within a mile of each other at Daytona Beach Shores.
It was probably one of these bars where the bartender would just put a bottle in a bag for you and just go, here, take that home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were the best dive bars in that area. You know, they had the bar in the middle, and then like all your liquor and beer and all of that around, you know, all around the bar, and people just smoking up a storm. and
Yeah.
and her son, he has taken over the family business down there, and or I think he's going to. And her other son is now he was running for judge for
Wow.
Volusia
So
County
the
judge.
Metz family is still
Yeah.
going to be Claire's going to
Yeah.
have an impact for years to come.
Yeah. She's retired now. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I knew that. I remember when she
Yes.
retired. I was still there when she retired.
But
It was
you know
fantastic.
what?
Everybody loves Claire. I mean, nobody has anything bad to say about Claire Metz.
She was amazing, and I was really honored when she used to, when I was leaving, she'd be like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. You're always giving me a run for my money, Blaine, and
Yeah.
and I felt
you
really
did.
proud. And when I first got there, I used to get really angry and frustrated by Claire Metz because I was so young and tenacious and competitive, and I just refused to accept that she was the dominant force and that she, and then over time I started realizing what investing your time into a place, investing your time to a community, that there's an earned respect there. There's an earned seniority. And when I started to realize that, I started to have this really great respect for Claire and everything she did, and I started to see her as a mentor and a friend. And when I started to take that approach, I got better at my job just by I don't know, just coming from, instead of a competitive place, coming from like a compassionate, true from the heart.
Really caring about the community
desire.
you were
Yeah.
servicing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I saw with Claire. She really cared about her community. She really cared about what she was doing. She thought the being on TV and the news stuff, I think some of that was like BS to her.
It
But
was like secondary.
but she
It was
really
something she
liked-
had to do to get the job done, was be on
exactly.
TV.
But
Right.
she really liked to get into a story. She really liked to go invest herself into people. But she was funny, and I'll tell one. She smoked all the time. She'd be smoking in the live truck, writing her packages, and one of the years out there, a news crew got shot in like South Carolina or something, and it was national news because it was a horrible story, and a lot of us in the
Oh,
news.
yeah, I remember. It was in
Yeah.
Virginia, I believe.
It was Virginia, yeah.
Yeah. Live on the air in the morning show.
It was live on the air.
Reporter got shot,
A
right.
reporter and a photographer both got shot and killed. And it was the most disturbing thing for journalists across the country at local stations. And we were on a scene with all the stations in Daytona. I think we were at Daytona on this day. And Claire was there, and we were all just devastated and just upset by this. And we're all just kind of just talking about it. And Claire walks up to us smoking her cigarette. She's like, and she looks at us and she goes, "You guys should really try smoking. It really helps take a lot of stress off." It's just like,
Oh, good old Claire.
it was like,
Good
it
old
wasn't,
Claire.
It wasn't funny at the time because we were just like, because we're
Everybody
she
was in shock. No, I remember that day. That was an absolutely brutal story because, and I think at the time, I don't know if I was on the morning show or not, but obviously we all had that feeling, and it did happen in Orlando. There was also a reporter shot in Orlando
I
in his
remember
car
that.
sitting
He
at
was
a
a-
crime scene.
And he was a former Channel 9 intern.
Yeah, he was. We all knew him.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, this was a reporter standing doing a live interview live on television when it happened, and the shooter was a former television reporter at the station. So it was
Yeah.
one of their own, kind of like a going postal, as they say. And
Yeah,
it was just a brutal, brutal thing.
And just what a small world TV news can be is the fiance, I think, of the photographer who was shot that day. I ended up working with her in Charlotte at WSOC.
Wow.
And
Small
you
world.
could just tell how much that weighed on her. But it's just crazy. You're just one person or a few people away from somebody who knows
Yep.
somebody involved in something like that.
And this wasn't that situation, but you often are standing there concentrating on your live shots and doing the things that you're doing in a very dangerous situation, a very dangerous place,
And
whether
it's
it's a shooting or a hurricane or whatever it might be.
And on the topic of just, and I know we'll probably talk about the state of media, but
And we're going to get to that. Claire Metz is going to be my bouncing off point. So I'll get to that in a moment, but go ahead.
But yeah, it's a dangerous thing. Like we used to just put those splashy graphics all over everything on our trucks and everything like that. And you're not seeing that as much today. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah.
But I don't see as many live trucks.
Well, it makes you a target.
But I don't even see the smaller cars marked up anymore. They're plain white, low key.
And that's what I always wanted. I didn't want a big billboard on the side of our trucks because then people pester you and,
Yeah, and oftentimes it was kind, people.
Yeah.
I would say that also changed. I felt like those kind of things, sometimes I would get more confrontational people over time. And when before it was more like, hey man, you guys are awesome. Like I love watching you guys. To like, it started turning into like, hey, you guys are ABC affiliates. You tell David Muir that he's a liar and da da da. And
I'll call him right now. I'll call David up.
I'm going to have a beer with him later. I'll go call him up in New York and tell him you said that.
And the average viewer doesn't understand the difference between an affiliate and the actual company. Even in an owned and operated situation, which we call an O&O in the business, where like WCBS or WABC in New York, they're in a different newsroom than the ABC network people. And it's a different operation. ABC network news, ABC News, that's ABC News. But if you're in an O&O or even affiliate's kind of a step down because that's owned by a different company. At least the owned and operated stations are owned by the network. In our situation, we work for Cox Media Group, which is a huge famous company. But we didn't work for ABC, so people would complain to us about something ABC did, and we'd be like, well, that's just the network we're on.
Yeah, or even something that CNN or Fox or something, they would think like we were all in this big club together, and we're all just like got each other's cell phones and stuff.
Well, let's talk for a second, because a lot of times one of the big questions that I get from a lot of people, in fact, I was talking to a friend of mine, he goes by Tuttle, his name's Patrick Fowler. I was talking to him the other day. He's a radio producer he's been on everybody. He was on the Monsters in the Morning. He was on Bubba the Love Sponge. I think he's still on Bubba's show. Anyway, he was asking me, Steve, tell me honestly, did you ever have people pressuring you to say one thing or another thing? And I know that I sort of existed in a special bubble of my own in a way, because I kind of got to say whatever I wanted to say. But I said to Tuttle, I said, no, like no one. I mean, I had a couple stories spiked, where you'd mysteriously, like no one was interested in that investigation into that thing anymore. Yeah. And you'd wonder why, but you had to move on with your day and do the story that you were assigned to do. But I never had anybody say, no, Steve, don't say it that way, or no, use this soundbite instead of that soundbite. Did you have any of that happening, other than producers just saying, well, that's a better soundbite to use? Did you ever, was anybody politically ever steering you in one direction or another?
I never had that. Not in local news. There was sort of just that little bit of editorial push, like, a different soundbite, or we're going to word this thing a little different. And I will say, there was never like any intentional things that would happen. But I think as things, like after 2010, like after 2016, when I came to Charlotte and we started seeing some of these kind of racial things play out, and, COVID and all these other things, I feel like there was maybe a little bit more of some editorial things happening. And it was almost more like carelessness, or just like not enough time to do it right. And younger people making decisions that may not understand the implications or the consequences of running a certain soundbite and not adding context to that, or using emotive language that might not be necessary to tell a story. I feel like those kind of things started happening more, but there was never anybody like kind of who had their finger on what I was doing and just completely manipulating it to steer it in some political direction. That was never the case. It was usually inexperience, incompetence, or just trying to like make it a little more catchy or, you know, sexy sounding in the wording, or a more emotional soundbite versus one where somebody's just talking normally, like
sensationalizing things a little
bit. Yeah,
bit
so
more.
sensationalism, we would see that. I think, you know, just trying to get more bang out of it, you know.
One of the things that I saw over my career was sort of an arc where the producer, and so when you talk about producing a television program, you know, you have producers and directors. A director's usually sitting in the booth, punching up cameras and things like that. It's not like a director in a movie. It's a very different thing. The producer in the movie is usually in the background just getting the funds right and setting things up. But in a television newsroom, the producer is the person who's stacking the show and deciding, what are we going to talk about first? How long are we going to talk about that thing? And then what are we going to talk about next? And how long are we going to talk about? What sound bites and elements are we going to use in this show? And when I started in the business, the producer was almost always the most experienced person. They had been with the television station for decades and so on and so forth. But as I got older, I started to realize, boy, these producers are like kids in their 20s. And that became the cheap spot for these television stations for their hiring. You know, so they would get the producers for less than the on-air talent. And the producer kind of didn't know what they were doing and was trying to tell more experienced people what to do.
Exactly. And I think... and when I was at Channel 9, which I started in Channel 9 in 2009, and the producers were getting younger at that point already, but even those producers had worked in like a middle market for a little bit. They weren't like most of them were not 40 or 50 plus, you know, veterans, but they were like in their late 20s or maybe early 30s. And they had worked at like a Sarasota, you know, market like Fort Myers or something like that, or, you know, another place before coming to Channel 9. But now you are seeing, and I'm hearing that the producers are right out of college. This is their first job in a top 20 market.
Which you think about that, you're getting, so that person is crafting the newscast and deciding what are we going to put in this show, and it's a half an hour long or an hour long, whatever. And the person that is deciding what you're going to hear probably has never paid off a car, doesn't have any kids, hasn't paid their school loans off yet, has never been to a city council meeting, has never been to a school board meeting. Has never gotten a mortgage, don't understand some of these basic things of life, and yet you're being trusted to like give the local news to the people.
Yeah, and I know it's a hard job, and I hate being like that older person like criticizing younger people trying to do the best they can. But the facts are the facts, and that is, you know, if you don't know what it's like to be a dad or a mom, or you know, go to a council meeting or just go walk the streets anywhere and see what's happening out in the world, that's going to affect how you look at the news. Like I remember when my son was born and when I was anchoring and these stories of things happening to children, which they bothered me before. They've always bothered me. Like one of my first stories I ever covered as a reporter in Tallahassee involved a child death, and it gave me nightmares. But when I became a dad, and Steve, you can probably speak to this, when you would see a story of something happening to a child, I'd have to keep myself from getting overly emotional and, you know, almost crying like on air, you know, because these things just affect you differently when you live that experience.
Yeah. I mean, I consider myself a tough guy, and there were only a few times where I actually like teared up about things, and they almost exclusively were children being abused, injured, killed. Terrible things happen to kids because and as journalists, we had to see details that we could not put on television. So we knew a lot more. We sat in that courtroom and saw the pictures.
You would read the narrative of an investigative report. Because even their press releases, they wouldn't always do press releases on those things, but the police would talk to us about it, and then they would give us a police report on something that happened, and there'd be some awful, just graphic things in there because they have to have it in there for the court system and for the cases and the investigation. So we would have to weed through that and in a matter of words just kind of indicate that something really terrible had happened, and that's something that we would that's about the limit of the censorship that we would do. Is just you wouldn't want to hear some of these things in these police reports. You wouldn't want us to describe that,
right?
And a lot of times we were gearing our news toward this was stuff you're going to hear right around dinner time, so we would try to curtail the
graphic nature of what, the disturbing. We have seen many disturbing details, dude.
Yeah. But back to your point of just the industry changing, it's we've seen so much change, and I feel like it happened so fast, like in just 10 years time, and the last 15 years, it's just such a different industry than it was.
How do you see, is there a way in your mind that we get back to a world where there are Claire Metzes running around that have been in that community forever and are trusted journalists on a local level? She's a great example of something you're not going to get. I don't know that Daytona is ever going to have another Claire Metz. You know what I mean? Someone who's so ingrained in the community, knows so much about her community, and it has a huge platform in that community. So all those elements come together. I don't know that we can get back to that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see because you start getting into trying to predict the future and what's going to happen. But I think Bob is right with people are turning to YouTube and looking for content there. I think what I would like to see is somebody like a Claire Metz with a YouTube channel that's covering Daytona Beach and making the rounds and investigating things. Because I really think local news and local journalism, I feel like it is so valuable to a community. You need people digging into your local government. You need people telling you what's happening. Even those unpleasant, disturbing stories, those are symptoms of something wrong that might be happening in your community at some level, whether it's education, government, police, judicial. Your local journalists are critical to helping your life be better.
Yeah. Figuring out whether government's being sloppy with their money or
exactly
corruption, things like that.
I would love to see like a YouTube, maybe not a YouTube star, but a YouTube journalist that does that would be like a Claire Metz. But I think the problem is it's so saturated. There's so much out there that how will people gravitate toward and lift somebody up, or highlight somebody like that? That's the hard part, because I feel like the traditional news, then the stations we worked for, and a lot of other things, newspapers, they're getting lost in the chatter and the noise, and people are kind of just wandering around, and it's not enough to make those businesses profitable, the traditional format profitable. It's not enough to, bring attention or make a star out of somebody like a Claire Metz or something like that, or a Steve Barrett, if you will.
I'm not on Claire's level.
But I think that's
don't elevate me.
But and I think if you go back and listen to the podcast with Bob, that's where your expertise is on what's happening as far as where the industry is going. And I emailed him like a year or so ago, and he said it on your podcast that we're going to see consolidation. We're going to see maybe a few TV stations in each city. And it's happening.
Maybe one.
Yeah. At the time of recording this podcast, I was looking at my news emails, and Nexstar is buying Tegna for $6.2 billion. And if you don't know, if your listeners aren't aware, like Nexstar and Tegna, they own something like, I don't know, a third of TV stations together. They own like a third of TV stations across the United States.
And with this deal, they'll have access to 80% of the television audience in the United States. 80%.
And to give you an example of that, there are 2 stations. There's 4 stations in Charlotte, North Carolina right now. And the NBC is owned by Tegna, last I checked. I don't know, who knows now. And the CBS affiliate is owned by Nexstar. So they're going to be
exactly what Bob Jordan was saying is happening right there.
And so he's really in the know just from his news background and just knowing the business so well. And he reads and watches so much stuff. He really nailed it on his predictions. Yeah. So,
if you want to watch that interview, it's a super interesting interview for a journalist out there trying to figure out what's going on. So that's like 2 episodes. I think it's episode 24 of Barrett Baxa Media Schmedia. It's a great interview with Bob Jordan. Anyway, well, hey, I want to ask you about one other thing that I always envied you guys out in Daytona about, and that's being able to cover the Daytona 500, man. How much fun was that?
I talk about just when you were asking me about like come up with some Florida man stories and stuff, and I was trying to narrow down the craziness of this area, and I was writing down just all the stuff that happens and just the different stuff on the beach.
Dig out your notes, man. Let's hear it.
You got bikers, you got shark bites, beach drivers.
Shark bites all the time, dude. The shark bite capital was right in your area.
On that list of all these crazy things, I'm like, oh well, I got to write NASCAR on there because and it seemed like nothing in Volusia County could just happen normally. You know, like
there had to be a pothole in the middle of the race. You know,
yes, caused by a jet dryer that was crashed into by, I think. Juan Pablo Montoya, he crashed into a jet dryer and it exploded and it burned a hole through the track, and they had to spend hours fixing it. And then another time I was at the beach with my family. It was a Saturday. We're enjoying ourselves. I'm like, the 500's tomorrow. I think this was a year or 2 after the pothole. I said the 500's tomorrow. I think I should be good today. I think it was like the Xfinity race and the truck races were like on Saturday. The truck race was Friday, Xfinity race on Saturday. But anyway, we're at the beach and one of the producers in Orlando, the assignment desk in Orlando, calls me up. Like, hey, what are you doing right now? Are you in town? I'm like, yeah, I'm at the beach with my family. Well, I think we need you to come in because we just had a car go through the catch fence at the track, and a bunch of fans are injured because race car parts flew into the stands. And that was my life there, man. And that could also be a shark bite. It was just the level of craziness. But I will tell you.
And then you had shuttle launches right down the road, just in the next county down.
Yeah, we were like a watch party area. But covering NASCAR was fantastic. It was such a fun thing. It would just be this huge influx of people, race fans and race teams. And to get to see all that, I got to meet all these cool drivers, got to ride in race cars, got to drive a Ferrari. It was just this other extra thing on top of all this craziness out there that I felt, while I sometimes like complain about the direction the business went in, I am so grateful and happy that I had the opportunity to do all of these amazing things and cover all of these amazing things and meet great people.
And you get to do wonderful things. Like I always tell people, they're like, what are the highlights? And I'm like, well, let's see. I've been in a blimp. I've actually taken the controls of a Russian MiG fighter jet at an air show once. I've been up in the biplane for it's called Snoopy One, and it's a one of those open air biplanes for pizza company. I can't remember. Red Baron Pizza.
The number of times we could have died on the job.
Yeah, and the cool things that you get to do, and then you've got the hurricanes. Those are fun to me, exhilarating, I want to call it, because it's not fun. People are losing their lives or losing their property or being injured, whatever. But you get to see things that nobody gets to see.
Yeah,
that's the fun part.
You talk about going and flying around. Like, you ever heard of Arnett sunglasses?
No.
There it was a surf brand of sunglasses, and Luxottica, which owns Ray-Ban, they bought the brand. And Greg Arnett, who invented this sunglass design, he sold his company and made tons of money. He just happened to live in New Smyrna Beach, and his hobby was flying like this military helicopter for the police department. Like New Smyrna Beach, small town, couldn't afford a helicopter, shouldn't be buying a helicopter. But this guy's like, well, I think you guys need one. I think it'd be helpful. So he volunteered himself and his helicopter for New Smyrna Beach Police. So we did a story on this, and he took us up for a ride, and just this is a day at work. We're going down there just to get video of this, and there's like, yeah, you guys want to go up? And we're like, okay. This is like a Monday or Tuesday.
I mean, a lot of people never get to go in things like helicopters. I've literally fallen asleep and taking naps in helicopters. That's how much time I've spent in helicopters.
they're like such dangerous things.
Yeah, you're just floating up there. So,
I will say we were very lucky to have. There's been some incidents out there. We had one in Charlotte not too long ago. We've been very lucky, I will tell you, because that was a very dangerous part of the job. Because there were some accidents in helicopters, and I was very blessed to be with great pilots and really great equipment.
Well, I think believe it or not, the two most the leading causes of death among broadcast journalists, like TV reporters and news photographers, are helicopter crashes. And it used to be, not so much anymore, but live truck accidents where you run the live truck into a power line or something like that. So car accident type things.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the disappointing part about it, like just how fragmented the media has become. Technology-wise, it's been this really kind of amazing time. You've seen some of those dangerous things like live trucks go away, or being very, very highly minimalized. Yeah. And they were dangerous things. You'd have to, in Florida, afternoon thunderstorms. The
lightning strike. Yeah. And then you'd have some young producer saying, well, what do you mean you can't go live? We're like, there's lightning, like within 10 miles of us. We're bringing the mast down. Like,
if they lose a live shot, they're losing like 2.5 minutes of their 30-minute show. And they've got to figure out what to put in there. They've got to make a weatherman stretch. And that would cause the ratings go down if they had to fill time. Yeah. But safety is safety, and there was sometimes that struggle out there where we're just like, listen, this isn't going to happen. We're not going to die out here and get struck by lightning. So we'd have to be like, oh, today's going to be a rough day weather-wise, and you'd have to finish your story hours earlier, and rush to get it in. Quality goes down. So you're going to avoid things like that. But now, they have the backpacks. We've talked about that.
So much easier, so much faster.
Yeah.
You're shooting something on your cell phone if you have to. And then I was talking to
circle like that. All of these things have made news gathering and everything easier and better. But you've got this industrial side of it, the business model side of it, the money making part of it that has just it's flawed, it's fallen apart, and that's kind of the disappointing part about it all.
Yeah. All right. Hey, I want to ask, I used to see you all the time. So Blaine, you're doing like a little bit of acting and also voiceover work. So you do a lot of voiceover work, but I got to tell you, there was a commercial that always popped up in our area. I live in Minnesota now, and it was you walking outside with a baby in your arms. And it was something about, I think it was like some sort of a lawn mowing thing. Husqvarna, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. So my new life is, voice acting, commercial acting. And if you can break into it, theatrical, which is like your streaming series and movies and stuff like that. But I'm having a lot of fun with all of that. But every so often I'll book a TV commercial, because I started doing voiceover work, and I was getting business doing that. And my voice acting coach, she said, you were on TV for like something like over 10 years or something. So you need to get an agent, and you should still be doing like on camera stuff. You need to get into acting because you're not afraid of cameras. You should do it. I'm like, yeah, you know what? She's right. I really worked hard to loosen up and not be afraid and clam up in front of a camera. I should be using that skill. And so I got an agent. I have a different agent now, but I started getting auditions for like movies and commercials and stuff. And it's been a really exciting thing. And
you look like you could be the next Jack Ryan, maybe.
You never know. You never know, man.
Yeah, in this business, you don't know. Well, good. Hey, man, that Husqvarna commercial used to come on all the time, and I'd say, Nancy, there's Blaine.
Yeah, the commercial is the Husqvarna auto mower, which is like a robotic mower.
Yeah.
And I'm a sleep deprived dad with a baby, getting mad at my neighbor's traditional lawnmower. So I come outside with a baby, which was actually a fake baby, on my chest and a baby carrier. And I tell the guy, I said, Greg, I bought you an auto mower, so you don't have to use that loud thing anymore, or something like that. So,
yeah, that's it. It's a good. It's actually a good commercial.
It's a really fun thing. I think it's been really like a blessing because they really take their time in the film business. It's total everything's opposite. It's like they are under budgets and constraints, and they have their own challenges in that world, I will say. But they will shoot something again and again to make sure it looks just the way they want it to look. You know, they'll rent an entire house, and they'll have 20 crew members. So it's the most bizarre thing. You and I had
a giant grip truck.
Yeah, you and I were
outside.
you were a photographer, and were you one man banding it to it?
I never. I mean, for a short period of time during the first Gulf War, I had to one man band because they sent my photographer over to the war zone, and so I one man banded for like 2 months. Hated it, but for the most part, I was a photographer, and then I was in news management. So I worked my way up through news management as a producer, and then I finally switched sides of the camera and decided I wanted to. If I was going to go back in the field, I wanted to be on camera.
Even having a photographer, even if you're a reporter in the field, we have to wear so many hats.
Yeah.
You're not just a reporter. You're a field producer.
Yeah.
You're a location scout.
You're
so
an
you
assignment
scout
editor.
locations.
Yeah.
You're an assignment editor.
You're a truck operator.
You're a production assistant for your photographer at times. You're a gaffer.
You're running
your
cables.
photographer is a gaffer. Between the reporter and photographer out in the field, they're easily doing 10 jobs. That and I'm not exaggerating. Those are all jobs that have names in the film industry. So when I got into the film industry, it's like I'm standing here as an actor, and that's my only job. Yeah. That's my only job, and I'm surrounded by like 10 to 20 people all doing those individual jobs. You've got the producer, you've got a production assistant, you've got a director, you've got an assistant director, you've got a gaffer who's bringing in lights and all of this stuff. You've got a camera operator, you've got an assistant camera operator.
Wow. That's a different world.
You've got this little team of people who are doing your wardrobe.
But if we had that out in the field, you'd never get anything done. Because you just had to work as a team. You were lucky enough. You worked with Jason Sargent and Lou Bonnell. You probably worked with him quite a bit at the time. Two of the best in the business. I mean, these guys are the best. And but Sargent's still at it. Lou Bonnell, now retired, but Sargent's still out there surfing in the morning. And then he goes to work. And then while he's editing the package or while you're writing your story, he finds a little fishing hole, and he brings his fishing pole with him sometimes and does a little bit of fishing.
Zero exaggeration.
Or is that a secret? Is that a secret that he hits that he casts a rod every once in a while?
No, he would say he's like I'm gonna hit up this pond, bro, and I don't give a shit. He's like I'm gonna fish. This is part of my break. I'm gonna fish while you write that package. You let me know when you're done. I'll edit it and we'll go live.
It's a perfect surgeon. Yeah. He's such a surfer guy, man. I love him.
He'd get me out there in the morning before work to go surfing, and it was the most stress relieving thing to start your day out in the waves, just surfing, seeing that sun come up over the horizon. But yeah, like we would get done at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. He's like, you gonna be out there tomorrow morning, bro? And I said, I don't know, man. It's like we gotta get out there at like.
It's like he's a drug pusher at this point, pushing the surfing.
I gotta get out to the Ponce Inlet at like 6 in the morning. I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. I'm gonna be pretty tired. It's like, it's gonna be sick, bro. It's gonna be epic. It's gonna be clean.
And I love filling in for you because you'd have like an hour drive to get to Daytona in the morning if you got assigned to go out there if you were off. And the best thing was the first thing Sergeant would do after he got done surfing in the morning is he would call around to everybody if you were gone, if his reporter was gone, and he'd call me up and go, Steve, you need to call this person, that person. There's a story about this and there's a story about that. So he would do all, half of my work for me before I even arrived, and I just have to make a couple of phone calls on my way to Daytona.
Yeah, he had his own relationships with people, and he would have his
and everybody loves Serge.
Dude, he's fantastic. He's still at it. I talked to him not too long ago. We were talking about the Bob Jordan episode because Bob Jordan was one of those guys where when Jason and I would bust our ass, because there was a time where they would be having us do 2 and 3 packages in a day.
Yeah, I remember that.
And at least 2 of those were completely different stories on different parts of the world, and but Bob was one of those news directors where he was hard on people, and he would make people come back down to earth that they needed to be talked to, but at the same time, if you worked hard, he saw it and he recognized it. And I remember we had one of those 3 package days. It was a 2 package day or 3 package day, and we busted our butts, and it was a hard day. And we didn't expect anything out of it. We didn't, we were just like, man, we're just glad we got all that done, and it looked good. And all of a sudden, we get a call. Put me on speakerphone. This is Bob Jordan. You and Jason, you guys really kicked ass out there today. You did a great job. I want you guys to both take your wives out to dinner anywhere you want, and it's on the station. And we're like, oh, well, all right. Thanks,
and he would be talking just like that, leaning over his desk with his phone on speakerphone right there in his office. Good impression. You do good impressions.
He would. I do want to tell a story of me getting hired at Channel 9. So I worked in Tallahassee at WCTV. I was there for about 2 years as a one-man band, and I would do the truck, the camera. I would do it all. I didn't always have to do the truck because they didn't go live all the time there, but I did do it from time to time. But anyway, so I just got tired of it. I think at that point I was making like right around $20,000 a year, and I was just broke as hell. And I went to college for 4 years. I was like, what am I doing? And this was during the recession, so this is like 2008, and it seemed hopeless. And I'm like, this is so far and away from like a big market television station that I'm just gonna try to go home to Orlando. I'm gonna just try to go home and get a job there, even if I'm not on camera. I just want to go back there. So I'm just like, I at least need to get a look at all these stations. I said, I wonder if I can just call them up because I'm a reporter up here, if they'll just let me, just kind of check it out. So I was able to get tours and just come in and look around at every station in Orlando.
Really?
And I don't know how this happened, but I did not expect to meet news directors, and I ended up, out of the 4 TV stations I went to, I got in front of 3 news directors.
Wow, that's almost unheard of.
And I wasn't even trying to do that. I was just there, and I had my DVD, I had my resume with me, my reel, my reporter reel, and I had some pretty good stuff on it at that point. But I was market 100, and I was the 105 largest television market in the United States in Tallahassee. Orlando is like 18 at that time, and I was like, "There's no way." I'm just going to tell these people if I get to talk to them that I'll basically do anything. And my friend at Channel 9, Sean Lavin, he said, hey, they're hiring like a web editing position to post videos on the web on the weekend to, add to the content. And so I actually lined up like a little interview at Channel 9 for that spot. But anyway, I went to News 13 right around lunchtime, and I got in front of a news director. I think his name was Sean McNamara, and I sat in front of him, and he saw my reel because we worked with News 13 up in Tallahassee, and he's like you're really good. I think you're on the right track. He's like, I think you really have a knack for this, and you're really good. But right now, with the way the economy is, there's a lot of people, a lot of folks out of work right now. So you're going up against some people with not just a little bit more experience than you, but a lot more experience. So just keep at it, keep working hard. I think you got the talent, and you'll eventually get there. But basically, it was like a not today, buddy. And then my last thing of the day was my meeting at Channel 9, and my whole day was just kind of like, well, this is cool.
You're kind of bummed out now.
Yeah, kind of bummed out at this point. And I go into the waiting room, and Dave Cyrack, who I'm forever grateful to,
the great
comes
Dave
out.
Cyrack.
Dave Cyrack comes out. He was the one fielding these interviews for this weekend web editing job, and he's like, yeah, come on in. I'll show you around. We're about to do a newscast, but so I'll talk to you here in a minute. But I'm gonna walk you around. I'll show you. This is Susan. I met Susan Falcon, and then I saw Bob Opsahl like standing in front of that newsroom camera. Yeah. The Tease camera.
Yeah, up by the assignment desk.
He was just smiling, looking at the camera, and I was like, holy shit, that's Bob Opsahl. And I was starstruck because like I grew up, Bob Opsahl was he was our guy. We watched Channel 9 growing up, and I couldn't believe, and he had the bright lights on him. And I always try to remember that moment because that was the last time I remember like kind of looking at it all from the outside, and so he walks me around and he takes me in the control. This is our control room right here. And I'm just like, this is incredible. Like blew Tallahassee away, which I love Tallahassee. I love WCTV, but market top 20 markets, their equipment they had robotic cameras, all this stuff. And Dave goes, we really need someone he's talking to me in the control room. He's like, we need somebody to really beef up the web on the weekend. We're starting to, it tells you about the time. It's like we've been posting more videos on the web, and the weekend's just been looking a little slim, and we really want to get some more content, some more videos up there on the weekend. But you're on air up in Tallahassee. You're a reporter up there? I said, yeah. It's like, oh well, I'll see if Bob has a minute to talk to you. And I was like, I didn't know who he was. I was like, who's Bob? I met all these people all day, and
who's Bob Jordan?
Yeah, I didn't know who he was. That's how naive I was. And he walks me in. Dave's like, I was like, I'll take you over to Bob's office. And Bob's sitting there. He's got his two. And Bob's office was not like super fancy. It wasn't it was a nice office, but it was like a glass office,
glass front,
newsroom. And Dave walks me in there, and Bob was looking at the TV monitors, and he's like, so he's just looking up there, and he's like, Bob, this is Blaine. He's a reporter in Tallahassee, but he's applied for the weekend web job.
Yeah.
Bob goes, oh, come on in, son. So, well, look at you, got a full head of hair and everything. Sit down, son. And I was just like,
here, Bob's bald.
Yeah, and I shook his hand. I'm like, okay, well, I'm Blaine. It's nice to meet you. I go, what do you do here?
You're kidding.
He goes,
I'm the boss.
Yeah, because Dave didn't say this is the news director. He says, this is Bob, and he goes, I'm the midnight janitor. I'm the news director. Have a seat, son. And I was that was when this like white like just color probably washed over me and cold sweat. I was like, oh god, I just fucked this up. And I was like, I just didn't know who the news director was. He's like, well, so how long you been a reporter up there? And I said, straight up, he goes, how much are they paying you up there in Tallahassee? Because he was always a numbers guy. And I said,
right.
I said it's about something an hour. That equals like 21 grand a year. And he's like, they're paying you what? And they have college educated people who work here? He's like, that's ridiculous. He's like, well, we're not hiring any reporters right now. We don't have a lot of room on the staff for that. But is this your DVD? It's like, well, I don't normally do this, but we're all adults here. I'll go ahead and take a look at it. What the hell? And he puts my DVD in front of me.
Yeah.
And,
No.
And watches my reporter reel in front of me.
Oh, wow.
Which is like, it's like that never happens. Like, and Dave's, and the first shot that pops up is, and I didn't realize how good this stuff was. I just was doing my job up there.
Right.
I went to a plane crash and the plane tail sticking up over my shoulder. The next one was in Tropical Storm Faye, and I'm like blowing around in the wind in the storm. And they're like, oh, yeah. And they're like making sounds like that. And Dave's like smiling at me like that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah. And it's like, well, I told you we weren't hiring reporters right now, but this is really good stuff. You really have some good skill. I could probably bring you on part time, and maybe we'll move you up full time after about 6 months. And he wrote a number on a sheet of paper and passed it to me. He's like, but that's all I can do for you right now. And I'm just like,
job on the spot.
I think part time I was still going to be making more than what I made in Tallahassee. Wow. And I was like, I think I said I had to think about it, but I was just like, it was like no questions asked. And
right. Beautiful newsroom, great staff, it was a professional atmosphere. Yeah.
And I still remember while I was in there talking to him, Susan comes in, and this is before we had a 4:30 newscast. Susan Falcon, the assignment manager, comes in and during the interview, and she goes, Wesh is over a brush fire in East Orange County. Did you want to do a cut-in or anything like that? And Bob looks up at the TV and he sees Wesh and the brush fire, this little brush fire in a field. And on our TV is Oprah. And he's like, and he looks at the brush fire and he looks at Oprah and he's like, how big is that? It doesn't look very big. She goes, it's about 10 acres right now, but I think the fire department has it under control. It's like, no, that's not good TV. Oprah's good TV. Keep Oprah up right now.
Oh, that's Bob for you, man.
But it was just like a surreal experience. I called my mom after that, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, I just got a job offer at Channel 9." And she goes, "What?" She was just floored because that was our station we watched growing up. Was Channel 9, and my mom remembered you too. She's like, "I've always liked Bob Opsahl and Marty Salt and Marla Weech. They always mention Marla Weech, and then
I love
it's like,
Marla.
Who's that one guy?" He's a reporter. He doesn't. He kind of dresses kind of casually on TV, but I like watching him too. I said, "Is that Steve Barrett?" She goes, "Steve Barrett, him. I really like watching him too."
Oh well, thank you, Blaine's mom. That's very nice.
But yeah, but I tell people in all my time, not compared to you and some of the other veterans out there, but I did 15 years, which I felt was admirable in the business. My time at WFTV and that time in Daytona especially was my favorite, most fun time I had in the business. And I'm forever grateful to have worked there with all of you and so many wonderful people, for sure.
All right. Well, with that, man, I got to tell you, I hear my 3-year-old grandson running around upstairs as I'm talking, and I want to go give him a hug. I haven't seen him in a month or two. But Blaine, it's been so good catching up with you, man. And I hope that you'll come back on with us and we can talk about some more things. Every once in a while you can sit down in front of your camera and we can talk journalism. I
would love to do that. And because I looked them up, some of my top Florida man stories, I won't go into detail.
All right, let's hear them.
In 2014, a man keeping 2 7-foot alligators as pets in his residential backyard. 2 or 3 houses down from a daycare. There's one for you. There's a Florida man.
And they took those from him. I remember I covered that one a little bit.
He was very emotional about these alligators.
Pet alligators.
He had tears on our camera, I think, because he raised these alligators from birth. Yeah. And they were his pets. And I think they ended up
giving the alligators back to him, if I remember correctly. Maybe not.
I think they took him to Gatorland.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was it. They found a place for him, a good place for him. Well, just that there's a place called Gatorland is Florida man in itself.
Our next Florida man, our Holly Hill boat standoff with the Holly Hill Police, which is a small town north of Daytona.
Yeah.
A gentleman ran aground at a city park on the intercoastal water, and it turned into a police raid on his houseboat because he threatened the police department that was telling him he needed to move this 50-foot houseboat. He threatened them that he would defend his houseboat by any means necessary, even lethal force.
Oh,
so they
wow.
ended up raiding his houseboat in Holly Hill. There's a Florida man for you. And then the next one's kind of a toss-up. I've got a Daytona Beach burglar killer. He shot a burglar through a door with an old-fashioned Russian revolver. And Daytona Chief Chitwood praised this man on TV, saying, this man did something the legal system couldn't do. And he took another scumbag off the streets of Daytona.
One of those, yeah.
And then the next one was the DeBerry mayor who caused a big scene building a homemade raft so he could sail from Cuba to Florida. That was a story as well. And those are just the ones I could just think of on quick notice, but there's so many more.
There's so many more.
And I'll end with that. So there's my Florida man stories.
Well, listen, I want you to do me a favor and work Mike Chitwood and tell him you know of this great podcast that Steve Barrett's doing. And
you tell Steve Barrett, I'll talk to him, brother.
Good. That's what I want to hear. I want you. That's your assignment. I'll put you back to work, just like Bob Jordan.
All right. I'll let you know what he says, but I'm pretty sure he'll say yes. He always because you did fill in out there.
Yeah.
He'll remember you, and he likes you.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Blaine Tolison, man, it's been great catching up with you. Hey, listen, to all of our listeners, I want to make sure just comment on whatever we do. Give us your thoughts. Subscribe. That always helps. And whatever you can do to get our numbers up. We love journalists watching our podcast about journalism. So we hope you liked it. And Blaine, dude, it was great catching up with you.
Same here. Pleasure's all mine.
All right. I'm off to my grandson.
All right. Have fun.
I'll catch you later, brother.
See you, brother.
Well, that's it for this episode of Barrett and Baxa Media Schmedia. Like, subscribe, and do all that other stuff podcasts want you to do. Become one of the chosen few, the in crowd. You know, the cool kids. The ones who were passed out on Barrett's pool deck long after the party ended.
You don't say I love you like you used to.